this is Elizabeth Smith. This is my kitchen, and this is going to be a, I think, longish video about this book, Inquiry and Innovation in the Classroom, using 20% time, Genius Hour, and oh boy, and PBL to Drive Student Success by A.J. Giuliani. I'm choosing to do it this way because I've never made a vlog before. I've certainly never used iMovie before, and I've had this MacBook for, this is going to be my third year, so I figured I probably should learn how to do it. So my goal is, I'm going to push myself to use technology in the classroom. What? So I'm going to push myself to try and just do like a chapter by chapter reflection, and then maybe stick them all together to make one big video. So we're going to see how that goes. So anyways, I'm going to be reflecting a bit today on the foreword, on the introduction, and then chapter 1, Real Classrooms for a Real World. So the foreword is by George Couros, and if I remember correctly, he was the keynote speaker at one of our superintendent conference days. So I liked his foreword very much. So the thing that I read that I had a reaction to was there was an article that said creativity was the #1 quality that they looked for in their employees. But in the same article, those schools were listed as one of the reasons that children were not creative, and stated that within schools there's no concerted effort to nurture the creativity of all children. I kind of disagree with that statement as a music teacher, because that's one of my purposes in the music room, is to nurture students' creativity. So I'm wondering if that's more of a statement about general education, and I also think it could stand as a fair point to like include and increase arts and music in the school, because it does teach kids how to foster their own creativity, and it's something that I make a point of. Hoping to do more of that in this coming year, but especially in my 5th grade last year, I feel like I gave them a lot of I gave them like some composition projects, and that allowed them to foster their creativity a bit. And I let the 6th graders choose songs for the ukulele project, and if they had if the songs had chords that we didn't learn in class, they had to figure out how to teach it to themselves. So hopefully I'll be able to do even more of that this year. And the other thing in the foreword that I really liked was that how do we make creativity happen? And it was educators need to see themselves as innovators. We can talk about the constraints of testing, the curriculum, poor leadership, and a million other things, but that is pointing the finger away from what we can do ourselves. And that's not the way I thought that sentence would end, and I thought that I would really dislike the way that sentence ended, but I appreciated it. Like, that's pointing the finger away from what we can do ourselves. So obviously we can't change everything. We can't change, there's a lot of things in school that we can't change, but we as teachers have control over what we do, you know? And even if, you have to have that growth mindset. Like, even if your situation is difficult, you can't complain about all these factors that aren't in your control. I think that you just gotta step it up, you know? Like, are there parts of the job that are frustrating sometimes? Yeah. Can I change them? Some of them. Do I try to? Absolutely. And the things that I can't change, you just gotta let go. I know it's way easier said than done. So going into this book, I'm thinking like, okay, what can I do in my classroom to enhance my students' creativity, to give them those problem-solving skills, and also just to have fun, you know? So that was a very strong opening, very strong forward, I think. So yeah. So to the introduction, there were, it was very, it was really interesting. He referred to, A.J. Giuliani in his introduction referred to Dave Pink's book, Drive. His book explained that extrinsic motivation can only move a person to do just enough, yet intrinsic motivation can move a person to change the world. He wrote, control leads to compliance, autonomy leads to engagement. I wanted my students to be engaged, not controlled by the rewards I was providing. I don't know whether I 100% agree with this. I definitely do to a certain extent. I certainly think all teachers can relate to it. I went to a music teacher workshop, and one of the statements that got brought up was everybody works for something. So ideally, you do want that person to work toward intrinsic motivation. But I think before you get that, the students have to have maybe trust in you, or at least that's the stance that I've taken. Being a music teacher, some of the kids, especially some of the boys, come into the classroom thinking like, oh, music is really stupid, like, it's really girly, I don't really know what I'm going to learn. So I do use some extrinsic motivation to start out, and then when I think they have the trust in me, they start doing things. They start doing the things that I ask because they trust that there's something in it for them, and then they're gonna get that internal reward. With the example being that last year I did folk dancing with my third graders, and I knew it was a success because one of the third grade boys said, "Wow, that was really fun." So, excuse me. Oh, maybe I'll practice editing. Who knows? So I think that this book will help because it talks about the 20% time in Genius Hour. I think that will help me do less extrinsic motivation, but maybe more intrinsic motivation. But I guess we'll see. But I underlined that. I thought that was an interesting point. All right, so chapter 1, real classrooms for a real world. Oh, excuse me again. All right. So basically this chapter is saying we are preparing students for jobs that don't exist yet, but schools haven't really evolved to keep up with that. It's still like schools are preparing kids like they're factory workers, like during the industrialization period. That's it kind of it flipped a lot of things on its head for me. He writes like do well in school equals get into a good college, which is true, but then get good grades at college equals get a good job in the real world. And I was certainly taught that, like I was a good student. I was in the top 10% of my class. I went to college. I graduated summa cum laude. I put on extra recitals. I tried so hard, and then like I got a 3.95 or 3.9 average in college. I got out in the real world, couldn't find a job. And maybe that's just the nature of teaching. Like maybe if I had been like a business person, or like a degree in business or psychology or design or something, like I would have been able to figure something out. But like as a music teacher, I mean, my options were like subbing and private lesson teaching. And I mean, that's all I can think of right now. So, but that was one of the hardest things was for several years after college, for the first year after college, like I tried to get a job and couldn't land a full-time gig. For the record, it was 2012. So also like, I guess 50% of the workforce wasn't getting employed that year or something. But that was hard to grapple with because like, of course you want it to be this logical sequence, but it's not. And that's hard to grasp, especially for like, I mean, school, like it wasn't always easy, especially in college, holy crap, but like you're taught that like you work really hard and then you get a reward, like you get rewarded. It's like the same thing with like the American dream. Like you come, you work, and with enough work and enough perseverance, you get what you want, but it does not throw the creativity factor in. Um, so I thought that Giuliani had a great lead-in question right here. What are we doing in school to get students ready for this future for this future of work? Because it says that 65% of grade school kids will end up in jobs that haven't yet been invented. And that's kind of scary, thinking as a teacher, like, so they'll end up in jobs that haven't yet been invented. Teaching's been around for a long time. Teaching's been around for, at this point, like, public school teaching has been around for, I don't even know, like 100 years, 150 years. Lowell Mason, Boston, maybe I'm thinking music teaching, but it's been around. Like, music teaching's been around. I knew that I was preparing to become a music teacher, but like, I have down here, so companies, when I speak to small companies, emerging companies, the general sense is that the companies will do anything possible not to hire a full-time permanent employee. And like, that's a completely foreign concept to me, Like, everybody in my family has this, like, I mean, so my dad owns an ice cream shop. Like, okay, that's been around for 50 something years. Like, he knew what he was getting into. My mom's a teacher. My sister's a teacher. I have another sister who's a graphic designer. Like, advertising has been around for, I don't know, since newspapers were a thing. I have a sister who's a computer engineer computer engineers have been around for, I don't know, however, 50, 60, 70 years at this point. So like, the fact that that these kids are going to be doing things that like I haven't even processed is crazy. But reading that small part, so about they'll do anything possible not to hire a full-time permanent employee. What I thought of was companies that there's nothing to them. Like, people buy into the companies, and I'm thinking like Uber, and I'm thinking like Airbnb. It's like people offering their services on an as-needed basis. And I mean, now those, like 20 years ago, whatever, like there were cab services, but Uber is a completely different thing. And like, sure, there's hotels, but like Airbnb and VRBO have just totally revolutionized that. I personally like it a lot better. So, but like, somebody had to figure that out, and somebody had to make that business model, and it's a totally foreign concept. And I don't know how. I mean, what I like is like, okay, you have to teach kids creativity and you have to teach kids critical thinking skills, because you can't prepare them for like a future career necessarily, if you don't know what you're preparing them for. It blows my mind. Like, this blows my mind. I mean, like, it says we make it simple in school. Successful students receive an A, failing students receive an F. And it's like, okay, I was an A student for forever, and I couldn't find a job when I got out of work. And yet, like, in the first part, they talk about Charlie, who like used his creativity and used his knowledge to like become a self-made man. And I certainly could never have done that. No idea. Like, heck, for the first jobs I interviewed for, I thought, like, I am definitely not the best person for this job. And he believed he was, and he did it. And, like, what? So, I might be rambling a little bit, but here we go. So, I covered that, the industrialization. Something that so I don't know if it... Okay, so like, as a music teacher, teaching kids critical thinking and problem solving skills transfers to every area of life, not just to school. Maybe this relates, maybe it doesn't. I think one of the ways that schools are adequately preparing kids for jobs are through BOCES programs. Like, yeah, okay, like go to school for half the day, like take your math, your ELA, but then go and get on the job experience, like when you're in junior or senior high school. I think like maybe not everybody at Mid Lakes is going to go to college, and that's absolutely fine. But being able to give kids like a foundation in order to be successful, I think that that's really important. And maybe those BOCES programs, like in a sense, maybe will like challenge kids to use their creativity and critical thinking like on the job. Like I don't know, like say you're into like cosmetology and somebody comes in and they complain that like the hair wasn't done well enough, or like their nails weren't done well enough or whatever. Like, okay, what are we going to teach them through this? Like customer service, quality control, how to be professional, and like okay, so like you have this angry client, and what is in your power to do to help them. So I think that I think that this is absolutely right. Or I think that Giuliani is absolutely correct in this first chapter. Um, but I mean, just the fact that the world is changing so rapidly, like it's like I'm not ready for it. It's like um, I need to get with the program, you know. Um, in the gray section, when he's talking about creating your real classroom, real in quotation marks, it says that students should build portfolios that showcase what they have created and made over the years. The portfolio needs to be online and accessible. Their artifacts should be digital, include quotes from classmates, teammates, and teachers. And like, on the one hand, I know that I was being told as a teacher, like preparing to be a teacher, like be careful of everything that you post on social media because you never know what your employer is going to find and what your employer is going to like think of that Instagram account or that Facebook page or that like, oh God, that one Snapchat that somebody saved and then it got sent around. But the fact that they're encouraging students, like, create your digital portfolio, put yourself out there so early because then you become Googleable, like, and then maybe they'll see your work that you've done in high school and college, and then they'll be like, yes, that's the person that I want. That blows my mind. Like, the dorms didn't even have Wi-Fi when I went to college. Like, I know I'm pretty young, but like, and now they're encouraging students to do this. I mean, and it makes absolute sense for the way that we're going, like the way that the future's going. It's just like, we're charting new territory here. It's like insane. So, oh my goodness. So I think that going forward, I'm going to need to like take into consideration like keeping an open mind because this is a lot different from I mean I graduated college I graduated college 7 years ago. I graduated high school 11 years ago. But like I think I just need to keep an open mind because like even 10 years ago, like it's so radically different. So I know that I'm going to have like some strong gut reactions going forward, like, oh, we shouldn't do that. That's not the way that it's been done. That's not the way I was taught to do it. Well, surprise, the world's changing. So as we go along, I'm going to also try and keep making connections between this and music, and also just reflecting. So in the meantime, I guess signing off for today, and I'll be back next time with part 2, which would be how 20% time changed the world. So, can't wait. Okay, till next time.